Amid the sunlit vineyards of California, there stood a grand house, silent as if time itself had stopped. Daniel Cole, the man once hailed as the wine king, could sway the market with a nod, yet he was powerless before his twin daughters, who refused to eat, refused to smile, and allowed no one near them. 7 nannies had come and gone, leaving the house buried deeper in silence. Until one morning, a young woman stepped through the wooden gate with an old guitar and a radiant smile. No one knew that from that moment on, both the vineyard and Daniel's heart would never be the same. Before the story begins, tell me where you are watching from, or leave a number from 1 to 10 in the comments to rate this emotional journey. Morning sunlight poured over Napa Valley, spreading across rows of heavy grapes, bathing the land in gold. From a distance, the Cole estate looked like a perfect painting. Vineyard trellises in neat lines, the main house in elegant wooden architecture, surrounded by pale lavender fields. A passerby might believe it was a little paradise. But behind the large wooden doors, a heavy silence lingered, thick as fog. Daniel Cole sat in his upstairs office, staring out at the wide horizon with a heart that had never felt so narrow. 38 years old, owner of a famous winery, once gracing the covers of financial magazines. People called him the King of Napa, a man who could make the market bend with a single nod. Yet within this private room, that crown meant nothing. Daniel had never felt his power so useless. He could sign million-dollar contracts, but he could not get his twin daughters to finish a simple breakfast. Downstairs, Lily and Emma sat together at the long dining table. 5 years old, identical yet so different. Lily, thin, soft hair falling into her eyes, dreamy gaze. Emma, lively, round black eyes that once sparkled with mischief. But since their mother's passing, both had shut their hearts. The food before them grew cold, spoons and forks untouched, their small faces as still as wax figures. "Girls, just try one bite," came the weary voice of Mrs. Brown, the long-time housekeeper. Before her, slices of toast and glasses of milk had gone lukewarm. "If your father finds out you skipped again," she trailed off with a sigh. In the months since the mistress had died in an accident, no nanny had lasted more than 2 weeks. 7 had arrived, 7 had left, each departure deepening the silence of the house. Outside the window, workers tended the vineyard, the sound of shears crisp in the morning air. Life on the estate went on. Grapes ripened, the sun rose, wine was bottled, and customers waited for new shipments. Only within the house did time seem to stop. Lily scribbled lines that formed no picture. Emma stacked spoons and forks into a silent robot and stared. No laughter, no song. Daniel rose early, dressed in tailored suits, and buried himself in emails, contracts, and reports behind the walnut desk. It was how he avoided reality. He never knew what to say to his children beyond, "Be good," or "Listen to Mrs. Brown." And every late night, when he returned to his room, he admitted to himself, on the battlefield of business, he had triumphed, but at home, he had lost miserably. Once, Dr. Harris, the family psychologist, suggested he play games with the girls, read to them, even just sit with them during meals. Daniel nodded, but each time, a phone call dragged him away. He excused himself with, "I don't want to unsettle them more." In truth, he feared facing the reality that in his daughter's eyes he was a stranger. The Cole vineyard grew heavier with ripe grapes, while the house grew emptier of voices. Mrs. Brown, Mr. Lopez, and Clara, the long-serving staff, remembered the days before. The mistress's laughter ringing through the vines, the twins running free between rows, Daniel holding his wife and children beneath the great oak. Now, those images lived only in memory, and in the locked room Daniel kept untouched, everything of his wife left under dust. That morning the atmosphere was heavier than usual. Emma shoved her milk glass, spilling it across the spotless tablecloth. Lily dropped her pencil, eyes shimmering. Mrs. Brown flustered, Now, girls." But both suddenly rose and fled upstairs. Another breakfast ended in silence and disappointment. From the staircase, Daniel saw it all. His heart clenched, yet his feet stayed rooted. He no longer knew how to call his daughters, nor whether the words Lily, Emma could still reach them. And then, as if fate had timed it, a knock sounded at the door. No one knew that along with the Golden Valley sunlight, another light was about to enter the house in the form of a young woman, shoes dusty from the road, an old wooden guitar in her arms, and a smile so bright it could shake even the heaviest silence. The wooden gate creaked open, and Sophie Ramirez stepped onto the stone path leading to the grand house. On her shoulder hung an old backpack, carrying little more than a few changes of clothes and a weathered wooden guitar. She couldn't tell if the feeling rising in her chest was excitement or fear, only that each heartbeat seemed to echo through the sunlit valley of vines. She had accepted this job without much thought. But now, staring at the endless rows of grapes and the imposing house ahead, Sophie realized she was about to step into an entirely different world. Mrs. Brown opened the door, pausing at the sight of the young woman in faded jeans, a plaid shirt, her hair tied back, and a bright face. Unlike any nanny before, Sophie carried no portfolio, no businesslike dress, only a warm smile and brown eyes lit with sincerity. "You must be Sophie Ramirez?" Mrs. Brown asked, her voice mixed with doubt and curiosity. Sophie nodded, raising a polite hand, her smile radiant as morning light. "Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry for arriving earlier than planned. I hope I'm not disturbing." The kitchen was bright, with sunlight spilling through tall glass windows, but the atmosphere inside was heavy. Lily and Emma sat apart at the long dining table, heads lowered, milk gone cold, toast untouched. Lily fiddled with a colored pencil, sketching lifeless lines, while Emma spun a spoon as if it were a toy. Mrs. Brown tried to coax them, but every word fell into emptiness. Sophie said nothing. She quietly placed her guitar across her knees and strummed a soft chord. The simple sound filled the room, blending with the golden light, transforming the air. She began to sing gently, her voice clear yet warm, like a greeting that needed no language. "Hello, Lily, Emma. I'm Sophie. I heard there are 2 little artists here on a breakfast strike. Is that true?" The girls lifted their heads. Suspicion still lingered, but somewhere in their eyes a faint spark flickered. Emma blurted, "This isn't a spoon. It's a robot antenna." Sophie kept strumming, replying in mock seriousness, "Oh, then robots need energy to work, and where does energy come from?" "Eggs and milk." She turned her words into a playful tune, making the spoon in Emma's hand a microphone. Lily glanced at her sister, then suddenly let out a laugh. A small sound, but it sliced through the thick silence. "Caught you smiling," Sophie exclaimed, pretending to jot in an invisible notebook. "Report. Artist Lily sends out a happiness signal." Emma tried to cover her mouth, her shoulders shaking, and moments later, both girls were giggling. In the corner, Mrs. Brown's eyes stung. For the first time in months, she heard the children's laughter. The guitar's melody floated upstairs, where Daniel sat bent over contracts. He froze, frowning. Music? In his house? How long had it been since that sound had vanished? He rose, footsteps heavy on the wooden stairs. Reaching the kitchen, he stopped short. His daughters, statues for months, were swaying to the rhythm, toast in hand like microphones, singing along with the stranger. "What is going on here?" His deep, cold voice shattered the moment. Lily and Emma sat bolt upright, smiles gone. Mrs. Brown dropped her gaze. Sophie set the guitar aside, her smile calm. "Good morning, Mr. Cole. I was just trying another way to get them to eat." Daniel's brow tightened. He had expected a serious, orderly nanny, disciplined and quiet. Instead, before him stood a young woman who looked like a street musician, turning breakfast into a concert. "I need discipline, not a circus," he said curtly. Sophie shrugged, her eyes glimmering with challenge. "Discipline is important, but so is a smile, isn't it?" Lily let out a small laugh again. Emma clapped, toast still in her mouth. They had eaten more in this single breakfast than in months. Daniel hesitated. He studied Sophie, searching for pretense, but found only steady confidence and honesty. Without another word, he turned away, his voice cool. "You have 1 week. If I don't see real progress, don't waste your time." His footsteps echoed down the hall, leaving a heavy silence. Sophie drew a deep breath, then leaned down to whisper, "1 week? Then let's make it a magical week, shall we?" Lily nodded, eyes shining, while Emma leaned close as if sharing a secret. "You're more like a conductor than a nanny." Sophie laughed softly, hugging her guitar, a strange warmth rising inside her. She hadn't expected a few chords to change the atmosphere of the house. Nor did she know that in this very moment a new journey had begun, one that could change her life, and the lives of 3 people inside this vast home, forever. The first days of Sophie's stay at the vineyard unfolded like a quiet surprise for everyone. A house once so still that even the wind through the vines could be heard, now began to carry a new rhythm. In the mornings, instead of spoons tapping against cold milk glasses, there was the lively strum of guitar strings and a bright singing voice. At noon, instead of heavy silence, came the laughter of 2 little girls, turning salad into magic leaves and carrots into power potions. At night, instead of golden lamps casting their glow over emptiness, there were stories told in a dozen silly voices, sending Lily and Emma rolling with laughter across a heap of pillows. One day, while tidying up the storage room, Sophie discovered a dusty box of old costumes. She spread them out across the living room floor and declared, "Today is costume day." Lily immediately chose a glittering, though faded, princess dress. Emma plopped a crooked cowboy hat on her head, and Sophie threw on a cape like a wizard. The solemn living room became a stage of colors. Lily twirled, Emma brandished a broom as a sword, and Sophie strummed while narrating. Princess Lily and Knight Emma fought against the monster of boredom, and guess what? We won. The girls cheered, their laughter echoing up to the ceiling. In the vineyard, Sophie showed them how to plant tiny seeds in clay pots lined up along the wall. "This is our secret garden," she whispered. "Every day you water it a little, and it will grow just like your smiles." Lily eagerly made labels for each pot, while Emma invented names for the plants, from super carrot to robot bean. Sophie knew those seedlings might not thrive against the vast vineyard, but she also knew the plants weren't the point hope was. Even the staff could feel the change. Mr. Lopez, the driver, heard the girls laughing as he passed by and couldn't hide his grin. Clara, the quiet maid, slowly warmed up when Sophie invited her to join them, chalking pictures along the walkway. And Mrs. Brown, so long accustomed to gloom, now felt lighter each time she stepped into the kitchen. Daniel watched everything from a distance. He maintained his cold composure, yet could not deny what he saw. That evening, as he passed by his daughter's room, he caught Sophie telling a story. Her voice rose and fell, weaving each character into its own world. The twins curled under blankets, eyes sparkling, bursting into giggles every so often. Daniel stood frozen in the doorway, his hand unconsciously tightening on the folder he carried. The sight unsettled him. Joy so small, yet for him so unfamiliar, it ached. He turned quickly away, but that night, children's laughter echoed in his mind. Sophie did more than bring music. She gently drew Daniel closer to his daughters. One afternoon, just after a meeting, Sophie nudged open his office door. "Mr. Cole, Lily just finished a painting. She wants someone to see it first. Do you have a few minutes?" Daniel frowned, about to refuse, but Lily's eager eyes peeking from behind, Sophie made him hesitate. He nodded, following them. The painting showed 3 figures, a long-haired brunette woman, a smiling child, and another holding a pink sword. "This is Princess Sophie, this is me, and this is Emma," Lily explained carefully. Daniel bit his lip. He wasn't in the picture. Sophie stayed silent, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder, as if to remind him he still had a chance to step into his daughter's world. That night, Daniel sat alone in his study. He opened a drawer and pulled out an old family photo. His wife, radiant, holding Lily and Emma in the vineyard. Back then, Laughter had been so constant he had taken it for granted. Now, to hear it again, it required a stranger entering his house, a woman he wasn't sure he could trust, yet he couldn't deny the truth. Sophie had done what he could not. The vineyard still stretched silver under the candid moon, but inside the once lifeless house, corners began to breathe again. Off-key songs, tiny green sprouts, walls covered with drawings, all piecing together the fragments of a small miracle. And Daniel, though not ready to admit it, had begun to hear what he thought was lost forever. The beating hearts of his daughters, entwined with the strum of a stranger's guitar, weaving warmth back into his home. That afternoon, the sky was clear, rows of grapes glistening beneath the late Sunday. Sophie spread a few old blankets on the back lawn, brought out some empty crates, a pile of pillows, and called out excitedly, "Lily, Emma, today we're building the fortress against sadness." The girls squealed, running over with shining eyes. Together, they stacked crates into walls, piled pillows into chairs, draped blankets into a roof. Within minutes, a little tent full of laughter rose among the vineyard rows. Daniel returned from the office, pausing at the porch. The sight startled him. Since their mother's death, he hadn't seen his daughters truly play. Sophie turned, waving. "Mr. Cole, would you like to be the fortress guard?" He frowned, ready to retreat, but Emma dashed to him, grabbing his hand. "Please, Daddy. The fortress needs protecting," Lily added. "Without you, sadness will attack us easily." Two small faces gazed up at him, waiting, leaving him no room to refuse. Slowly, he stepped onto the grass. Sophie handed him a wooden stick, solemnly declaring, "From now on, you're the commander of the fortress guard. Mission: keep sadness from breaking in." Awkwardly, Daniel held the stick, unsure what to do. Then Emma climbed onto a crate, pointing outward. "There, Daddy, sadness is coming, chase it away." Lily burst into laughter. Daniel lifted the stick clumsily, pretending to drive it off. The girls laughed so hard their voices carried across the vines. His throat tightened at the sound. Once the fortress was built, Sophie suggested hide and seek. "Daddy, you seek?" Emma beamed. Daniel had never played this with them. He counted hesitantly, then opened his eyes. Giggles came from behind a tree, under the blanket roof. He pretended not to see until suddenly shouting, "Caught you!" The girls screamed with delight, scattering. For the first time in months, Daniel chased his daughter's laughter instead of chasing phone calls. When the game ended, the three collapsed inside the fortress, breathless. Hugging a pillow, Emma suddenly said, "Before, Lily and I hid too, but no one ever came to find us." The innocent words fell into silence. Daniel froze, his heart clenched. He looked at his daughters and realized how many times he had left them lost in their own world, with no hand pulling them back. Sophie gently placed her hand on his shoulder, her eyes soft yet firm, as if telling him he still had time. That night, Daniel didn't go straight to his study. He paused at the girls' bedroom door. Warm lamplight spilled through the crack. Peeking in, he saw them fast asleep, tangled in blankets, hair messy but faces peaceful. Sophie sat beside them, softly singing with her guitar. The melody was as light as wind, filling the room long empty of sound. Daniel stood quietly for a long time, his heartbeat slowing with each note. He knew he had missed too much, but perhaps it wasn't too late to begin again. Outside, the moon rose high, silver light blanketing the wide vineyard. Inside the small room, two little girls slept soundly after a day of laughter, while a father stood at the doorway, for the first time feeling he wasn't just an outsider. One weekend morning, sunlight streamed through the wooden windows, casting long patterns across the hall. Sophie had just finished tidying the living room when she noticed Lily and Emma whispering to each other. As she drew near, they quickly grabbed her hands, eyes glimmering with secrecy. "Miss Sophie, we'll show you a special place," Emma whispered. Lily nodded, adding, "No one but us has ever been allowed there. But you're different." They tugged her down the east hallway, toward a heavy wooden door, always closed. Sophie had passed by before, but never seen anyone enter. Mrs. Brown had once quietly mentioned that the master forbade anyone from touching that room. Sophie's heart tightened. Something told her this space held more than furniture, yet the trust shining in the girl's eyes kept her from refusing. The door creaked open, releasing the scent of old wood and dust. Inside, dim light fell upon objects arranged as if time had stopped. A white wedding gown still hung behind glass, its lace covered in a fine veil of dust. On the vanity sat a half-empty perfume bottle, carrying a faint trace of jasmine. Around the room, framed photos. Daniel and his wife on their wedding day, his wife cradling the twins as infants, the whole family smiling during a vineyard picnic. Lily hurried to the bed, hugging a worn teddy bear. This was Mommy's bear. She let me borrow it whenever I cried. Emma sat at a small piano, pressing a few uneven notes, whispering, "Mommy taught me twinkle, twinkle here, but since she left, Daddy never let us in again." Sophie sat beside them, drawing both into her arms. Her voice was soft as wind. "You miss your mother so much, don't you?" Two little heads nodded quickly. Lily murmured, "I want her to come back. I write letters and hide them under my pillow. Do you think she ever reads them?" Tears filled Sophie's eyes. She held them tighter. "Your mommy may not return, but her love is always in your hearts. Every time you laugh, that's her way of being here with you." Suddenly, the door burst open. Daniel stood there, face dark, eyes frozen. "What are you doing in here?" His voice was so sharp that Lily dropped the bear and Emma shrank back. Sophie rose quickly, facing his cutting stare. I just followed them in. They wanted to show me you had no right," Daniel cut in, striding forward, his gaze scanning the room as if guarding it from disturbance. He pulled his daughters behind him, voice harsh. "How many times have I told you never to come here? And still you—" Emma trembled. "But we wanted Miss Sophie to see Mommy." "Enough." Daniel's shout shattered the air. Both girls fell silent, eyes brimming. Sophie stepped forward, her voice steady but controlled. "Don't blame them. They only miss their mother and want to share. No one meant to break rules." Daniel swung toward her, voice rough yet cold. "You don't understand anything. This is my family's matter. This room belongs to my wife. No one touches it, least of all an outsider like you." Sophie met his eyes, tears shining but unyielding. "If you keep locking this room, memories will only become a heavy shadow." The girls don't need shadows. They need to remember her with joy, not fear. A silence stretched taut as a wire. Daniel's fists clenched, his voice trembling under restraint. "Don't tell me how to be a father. I'm the only one who knows how to protect them. And I won't let anyone, especially you, tamper with this pain." The twins huddled together, crying softly. Sophie longed to argue, but she realized any words now would only make things worse. She bent down, whispering to Lily and Emma, "It's okay. I'm right here." Then she stood tall and walked out, her heartbeat pounding. Behind her, Daniel remained, shoulders shaking as if he himself was about to break. The door closed, splitting two worlds, a father sealed in, his armor of coldness, and a young woman learning that the path to healing was anything but smooth. After the argument in the memory room, the Cole household grew suffocatingly heavy. Daniel returned to his frozen silence, rarely speaking, and whenever Sophie's eyes accidentally met his, there was nothing but emptiness between them. Lily and Emma seemed to sense the fracture. They laughed less, grew quieter, and even the games Sophie tried to invent fizzled out quickly. That afternoon, dark clouds rolled over the valley, wind sweeping hard through the vines. In the living room, Sophie was piecing together a puzzle with the girls when Daniel came home. He tossed his jacket on the chair, face drawn tight from a day of meetings. Instead of greeting, his voice was cold. "Can you just leave them alone? It's games, games, all the time. They need stability, not illusions." Sophie looked up, forcing calm into her voice. "They're more stable than you think. These illusions are what let them sleep at night." "Enough." Daniel's tone rose, sharp enough to make Lily flinch. "You don't understand anything about raising children. Stop pretending you know better than me, Emma blurted out. "But Miss Sophie makes us happy." Daniel turned, eyes filled with exhaustion and anger. "What you need isn't fleeting fun. You need a real family." And he swallowed the rest. But the sound alone made both girls shrink. The moment exploded. Lily grabbed her sister's hand, both bursting into tears as they bolted upstairs. A door slammed, then swung open again, and by the time Sophie and Daniel rushed after them, the children were gone. "Lily! Emma!" Sophie's voice cracked. Daniel searched room to room, flinging doors open, scanning closets and halls. "They're not here," he gasped. "Mrs." Brown rushed in, pale with panic. "They're not in the kitchen. Not outside either." Sophie's heart pounded. Where would the girls run when frightened? They needed somewhere safe, tied to joy. Suddenly, the image of wooden crates, blanket, roofs, and clear laughter came back to her. "The fortress," she whispered. Without another word, she darted toward the back door. Daniel closed behind. Wind tore through the vineyard rows, leaves rustling like whispers. They crossed the yard, following the path to the sheds. From a distance, Sophie caught the muffled sound of sobs from inside a crate. She ran, kneeling by the familiar wooden door. "Lily, Emma, it's me. It's Sophie." Silence. Then Lily's trembling whisper. "Daddy's mad at us. We made him sad." Her voice broke. Sophie pressed her palm to the door, her tone steady and warm. "No, sweethearts. It isn't your fault. Grown-ups sometimes say things they don't mean when they're angry. You did nothing wrong." Daniel stood behind her, face ashen. Hearing his daughter's cries rooted him in place. Sophie glanced up at him, urging with her eyes. Then she tapped the door lightly and began to sing. It was a Spanish lullaby her grandmother once used to soothe her, a gentle melody, warm as an embrace. The song filled the narrow space, slipping through the wood, softening each sob. After a moment, the door creaked open. Emma's tear-streaked face appeared before she threw herself into Sophie's arms. Lily followed, clinging tight, whispering through her shivers. "You won't leave us, will you? If Daddy makes you go, it'll be just us again." Sophie held them close, eyes stinging. "I'm here. I won't leave you." She looked up at Daniel. He stood frozen, eyes red, his face carved with guilt. On the way back, rain broke over the valley. Daniel carried Emma, and Sophie carried Lily. All four were drenched, but clung to one another as though the storm couldn't break them apart. Back inside, Sophie gently dried the girls' hair, changed their clothes, and sang the lullaby again until their breathing steadied in sleep. Daniel lingered at the doorway, his hand trembling against the frame, unable to step in, yet unwilling to leave. Finally, as Sophie closed the door softly, he spoke, voice cracked. "You did what I couldn't. You calmed them. You made them trust." He drew a long breath. "I don't know how to be a father anymore, Sophie. I don't know where to start." Her eyes were gentle, not condemning. "Start by being there. That's all they need." Outside, rain drummed against the roof. Inside, the fragile distance between a father and his daughters drew closer, not by power or wealth, but by the simple song and steadfast heart of a young woman who refused to give up. The morning after the storm, the sky cleared, each raindrop clinging to the grape leaves shimmering like crystal. The coal house, too, felt as though it had just weathered a tempest. The twins woke later than usual, eyes still puffy, but they clung to each other, pulling Sophie eagerly toward the kitchen. To their surprise, Daniel was already there. On the table sat a box of cereal and a pot of porridge still steaming. He fumbled with the ladle, awkward enough to drop the spoon onto the table. When he saw Sophie, he cleared his throat. "I thought, maybe I should try making breakfast for them." Emma gasped. "Daddy cooked? No way." Lily giggled. Daddy spilled the porridge. Daniel flushed red, but not in anger. He handed the spoon to Emma, let Lily sprinkle in brown sugar, while Sophie stood beside him, quietly guiding him on how to stir without clumping. The kitchen warmed with something unfamiliar. For the first time in months, they ate together not perfectly, but genuinely. From that day, Daniel began to show up more. He skipped a few meetings, spending afternoons walking the vineyard with his daughters. With Sophie's encouragement, he joined their games, awkward at first, then gradually finding ease, pretending to be a monster, chasing them, or crouching down to listen while Emma proudly presented a robot made from empty cans. One afternoon, Lily held out her sketchbook, the first page scrawled with, "I want Daddy in the picture." Daniel froze, then slowly picked up a colored pencil and drew a tall figure beside the two little girls. Lily beamed. Now it's really family. Sophie watched it all, a quiet joy swelling inside her. This was what she had hoped for, not to replace the girl's mother, but to help a father reclaim his place. Yet the more she witnessed Daniel's change, the more she felt the distance between them blur. Each time his eyes lingered on hers, her heartbeat quickened, and she turned away, afraid of reading too much in his gaze. One golden afternoon, Sophie and the girls staged a mini-concert. Emma drummed on pots and pans, Lily sang, Sophie strummed her guitar. Daniel lingered in the distance until they pulled him in, handing him an empty wine bottle to keep the rhythm. He struck off beat, sending them into fits of laughter, and to their surprise, he laughed too. A real laugh, unforced. Sophie caught him in that moment, saw not the cold master of the estate but a father, a man allowing joy to seep into his bones. That night, after tucking the girls into bed, Sophie stepped into the hall and nearly collided with Daniel leaning against the doorway. His face was tired, but his eyes were softer than ever. "Thank you," he said quietly. She paused. "For what?" "For making them laugh. For reminding me I'm still a father." His voice was low, nearly breaking. Sophie didn't know what to answer, so she only smiled. Silence lingered between them, but it was a silence full of truth, as if they shared the same unhealed wound. The next day, Emma insisted on teaching her father the game of Fortress Robot Guard. Daniel agreed, and Sophie watched, amused and moved, as the powerful businessman crawled on the grass, pretending to be shot by robots and collapsing dramatically. Lily shouted, "Daddy lost!" Daniel laughed until his sides hurt, then suddenly reached for Sophie, pulling her into the game. She tumbled down, hair loose, her laughter mingling with the wind through the vines. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, time stopped. Sophie's chest tightened, and Daniel quickly looked away, the flush on his cheeks undeniable. That evening, gathered in the living room, Emma spoke bluntly, "I wish Miss Sophie could stay forever. If she leaves, the fortress will be empty." Lily nodded. "Me too." Daniel froze, while Sophie clasped her hands, torn between warmth and fear. She knew the bond growing wasn't only in the girls' hearts, but in her own, and in the man across from her. She also knew that soon they would all have to face it. Outside, the vineyard bent heavy with fruit, harvest season near. Inside, another season bloomed, a season of new bonds, of love quietly budding between two people who had once locked their hearts away. But with it came a shadow for love, always walked hand in hand with the fear of loss, and Daniel Cole was not yet certain he had the courage to face it again. Autumn slowly wrapped the valley in shades of ripe gold. Each day, Sophie and the twins turned ordinary moments into little festivals. One day, costume day, another a lullaby contest for the neighbor's cat. Daniel, though still clumsy, began stepping into that world, setting aside the armor of work. Yet the closer he drew, the greater his fear grew. He had already lost the one he loved most once, and the thought of opening his heart again felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. One afternoon, sudden rain swept across the valley. Sophie shouted, "Umbrella parade!" and the four of them dashed into the vineyard beneath a large umbrella. Lily and Emma ran ahead, laughter echoing as they vanished between the rows. Sophie laughed, chasing after them until she slipped on wet grass. In a flash, Daniel caught her, pulling her close. They froze, breath mingling, and in the thundering silence, their lips brushed. Time stopped. Rain fell, leaves rustled, but all of it disappeared, leaving only their eyes locked together. Sophie's heart thudded like a snapped guitar string. Daniel, pale with shock, pulled back, letting go of her waist. "No, I can't," he stammered, face drained. Then he turned and walked away, leaving Sophie standing in the rain, chilled far deeper than her skin. That night, Sophie couldn't sleep. Sitting by the window, listening to raindrops drip, she replayed the bittersweet moment. For her, it was proof that Daniel still felt, but his words "I can't" slammed the door shut. At dawn, she packed her things. The twins clung to her suitcase, sobbing. "Don't go. Please don't go." Sophie hugged them tightly, whispering, "I have to leave for a while, but you'll always be in my heart." At the end of the hall, Daniel stood like stone, eyes dark. With Sophie gone, so was the light. The coal house slipped back into its old shape. Meals untouched, hallways silent. Daniel tried to fill the emptiness, but fumbled. He read stories, his voice flat. He tried to cook, but the porridge clumped. And Emma murmured sadly, "Not like Miss Sophie." The innocent words cut him deep. Alone at night in the memory room, staring at his wife's photo, he finally admitted he wasn't just losing a nanny, he was losing his last chance to mend his family. The school recital loomed. Lily and Emma had parts in the Twinkle Twinkle dance. Daniel, dressed in a suit, sat in the audience, restless. When the curtain rose and the music began, Emma froze, wide-eyed with fear. She burst into tears. "I want Miss Sophie. I can't dance without her." Lily sobbed too, clutching her sister's hand. The auditorium buzzed, and teachers flustered. Daniel rushed backstage, heart sinking. He crouched down, holding them, but they screamed, "Call Miss Sophie. She's the only one who understands." In that moment, truth hit him. Contracts, wealth, victories meant nothing if he couldn't give his daughters peace. With shaking hands, he pulled out his phone and dialed. His voice cracked. "Sophie, please. The girls need you. I need you." 20 minutes later, the auditorium doors flew open. Sophie hurried in, hair dripping from the rain. The hall hushed. The twins cried out in unison, running into her arms. She knelt, whispering, "I'm here. I'm not leaving again." Applause rippled. Teachers sighed with relief. Under the stage lights, Sophie held the girls' hands and led them back out. The music swelled. Lily and Emma danced their steps, their small voices joining Sophie's clear song. The hall fell silent, then erupted in thunderous applause. From the audience, Daniel wept openly. He knew he had been saved not just as a father, but as a man. The lights dimmed, but inside Daniel's chest, a different light had ignited. And this time, he vowed never to let it die again. That night, after the recital, the Cole home glowed brighter than usual. Lily and Emma sat on the sofa, eyes sparkling, retelling every detail from the stage lights, the music, to the moment Sophie appeared and the hall erupted. "If you hadn't come, we would have cried forever," Lily said, hugging Sophie tightly. Emma chimed in, "Yeah, you're our superhero." Sophie smiled, ruffling their hair, but when she looked up, she caught Daniel's gaze from across the room. He said nothing, only watched, his eyes holding something that made her heart tremble. After tucking the girls into bed, Sophie stepped into the vineyard. The moon hung above the trellises, night air rich with damp earth and ripe fruit. She thought of everything, the fleeting kiss in the rain, Daniel's desperate call, and the fear still gripping him. Her heart twisted, half longing to believe, half afraid it was all just weakness. Footsteps sounded softly behind her. Daniel appeared, hands shoved into his pockets, his figure heavy as though bearing the world. He stood still for a moment before speaking slowly. "I owe you. Thanks. Not just for today, but for everything you've brought into this house." Sophie turned, moonlight casting her face in silver. "You don't need to thank me. I only did what was needed for Lily and Emma." Daniel shook his head. "No, Sophie. You did more. You made them laugh, made them brave enough to stand on stage, made them believe this house still has room for joy. And you also made me," he faltered, breathing deep. "You made me remember I still have a heart." Sophie's chest fluttered. She pressed her lips together, trying to stay steady. "But you said it was a mistake." Daniel lowered his head, voice rough. "Yes, I was afraid. I thought if I opened my heart again, I'd lose everything again. But tonight, watching them run into your arms, hearing them sing and laugh with you, I realized I can't keep denying it. I'm not asking for marriage. I won't rush. But Sophie, please, stay. Not as a nanny, but as part of this family." Her throat tightened, emotions colliding, joy, fear, the ache of possible loss. Yet Daniel's eyes were different now. No longer cold denial, but fragile sincerity. Just then, Lily and Emma ran out, carrying a large drawing. On the paper, 4 figures held hands beneath the vineyard trellis. Daddy, Miss Sophie, and the 2 girls, with the messy words, "Our family forever." Lily looked up, eyes shining. "You'll stay, right? You're our family." Sophie hugged them, tears slipping down her cheeks. She lifted her gaze to Daniel. He stepped closer, not touching, but whispered, "One day, when you're ready, and when I find the courage, I'll say the words you deserve to hear. For now, all I ask is, don't leave again." In that moment, Sophie nodded. "I'll stay." The girls' laughter rang through the vineyard, drowning out the wind and night insects. Daniel exhaled, eyes glistening, while Sophie felt a new faith take root, not a rushed promise, but the true beginning of a family learning to heal day by day. Moonlight poured over the 4 of them, their shadows stretching across the damp earth. For the first time, the Cole home glowed not only with electric light, but with hope for the future. A year passed, and Napa Valley entered another harvest season. The vines bent heavy with fruit, leaves turning golden, the air alive with the rumble of trucks carrying wooden crates. But at the Cole estate, the change was deeper than the seasons. The house, once silent, now overflowed with laughter. Lily and Emma, a year older, chattered every morning about school, friends, and playground adventures. The living room walls were covered with drawings, cardboard robots, and small keepsakes crafted by their own hands. Daniel, too, was transformed. The man who once knew only contracts now spent afternoons teaching his daughters to ride bikes along vineyard paths or tending flower beds with Sophie by the porch. He was no longer the cold wine king, but a father, a man who had learned to place family above all. On the anniversary of the day Sophie chose to stay, Daniel prepared something special. At sunset, he led her beneath the wooden trellis, where paper lanterns glowed, strung carefully all week by Lily and Emma. The twins dashed about, whispering conspiratorially, then shouted together, "Daddy, it's time." Daniel knelt, pulling from his pocket an old gold ring, the family heirloom he had once been too afraid to give. This time, his eyes held no fear, only certainty. "Sophie Ramirez," his voice was steady, deep. "This past year you've given us a home, given me faith, given my daughters laughter. I once promised I would say the words you deserve. Tonight, I will. Will you marry me, be the mother to my girls, and build this family with me?" Sophie lifted her hand to her mouth, tears streaming, but her smile radiant. "Yes." Lily and Emma's cheers filled the vineyard as they wrapped their arms around both adults, their little embrace completing the circle. The wedding was held right there in the vineyard, under a trellis draped in lavender and glowing lanterns. It was not lavish, not crowded, but witnessed by those who mattered most. Mrs. Brown, Mr. Lopez, Clara, a few neighbors, and even Margaret, the grandmother who had once fiercely opposed. That day, she no longer scowled but quietly wiped her tears, watching her son's happiness and her granddaughters scattering petals as flower girls. Sophie, in a simple cream dress, lavender tucked in her hair, walked toward Daniel to the sound of a guitar. This time, he was the one strumming, not clumsy, but sure. As they exchanged vows, Daniel spoke simply, "I promise never again to leave you or the girls in darkness." Sophie replied, voice trembling, "I promise to help you keep this home warm, one day at a time." When the moon rose, they danced beneath the vines, Lily and Emma skipping around them, their laughter twining with the music. At last, the coal house breathed again, not with wealth, but with life, warmth, and a complete family. And perhaps this story reminds us, happiness doesn't come from clinging to the past, but from the courage to open your heart once more. Peace isn't a miracle that falls from the sky, it is woven by acts of love, repeated every day. Before we close, I want to ask you, if you were on this journey, would you be brave like Sophie, to stay, or like Daniel, to open your heart again? Share your thoughts, or simply leave a number from 1 to 10 to rate this emotional journey.